The Future of Management by Gary Hamel. Chapter 9, Learning from the Fringe.
Mary Parker Follett is arguably the 20th century's most prescient management thinker. Creative Experience, a book that was published in 1924, considers the following information. Leadership is not defined by exercise of power, but by the capacity to increase the sense of power among those who are led. The most essential work of the leader is to create more leaders. Contentious problems are best solved not by imposing a single point of view at the expense of all others, but by striving for a higher-order solution that integrates the diverse perspectives of all relevant constituents. A large organization is a collection of local communities. Individual and institutional growth are maximized when these communities are self-governing to the maximum degrees possible. Positive deviances. To take a glimpse at the future of management, one must search for positive deviance, organizations and social systems that defy the norms of conventional practice. In management, as in science, it's the anomalies that point us toward new truths. Finding the fringe. While pursuing the hunt of management mutants, one will need to search for a strategy. Start by identifying the management problem that you want to address, and then look to an outside organization with a novel solution of which you can offer a useful analogy. Throughout this chapter, we will cover several problems and challenges. Problem 1. In most companies, the farther down employees sit in the organization, or the more unconventional their views, the harder it is for them to get a hearing. This often contributes to denial at the top. Challenge 1. How do you create an organization where everyone's voice gets heard and ideas compete solely on their merits? How do you build a democracy of ideas? Problem 2. Most companies exploit no more than a fraction of their employees' imagination, due in part to a sort of creative apartheid. Challenge 2. How do you turn ordinary employees into extraordinary innovators? How do you amplify human imagination? Problem 3. Allocational rigidities frequently impair a company's capacity to fund the future. This puts a brake on the work of strategic renewal. Challenge 3. How do you accelerate the redeployment of capital and talent? How do you dynamically relocate resources? Problem 4. Positional biases and inattention to competing viewpoints often lead to poor decision-making at the top. Challenge 4. How do you ensure that decisions fully reflect the collective knowledge of the organization? How do you aggregate collective wisdom? Problem 5. Executive knowledge and capability often depreciate faster than management power and influence, often with unfortunate consequences. Challenge 5. How do you keep top management's out-of-date beliefs from impeding strategic renewal? How do you minimize the drag of old mental models? Problem 6. Too much management and too little freedom sap the initiative of employees and leave little time or energy for innovation. Challenge 6. How do you turn an army of conscripts into a community of volunteers? How do you give everyone the chance to opt in? Challenge 1. Creating a democracy of ideas. What do you think correlates most highly with an individual's position in the corporate hierarchy? Across most organizations, it tends to be salary, years of experience, authority, and company perks. Imagine what a democracy of ideas would look like within an organization. Employees would feel free to share their thoughts and opinions, however politically charged they might be. New ideas would be given the chance to garner support before being voted up or down by top management. The internet has decisively destroyed the power of the elites to determine what gets published and who gets heard. An explosion of online opinion, comment, advice, and insight exists within the blog world. Unfortunately, the explosion of this citizen media has yet to be matched by large companies. Some organizations may solicit ideas via some sort of electronic suggestion box, online discussion board, but few companies invite employees to publish hard-hitting internal blogs or host open to all online discussions on key decisions. Challenge 2. Amplifying human imagination. As humans, we cannot help ourselves, we must be creative. It is creativity that allows us to assert our humanity and individuality. Digital technology is rapidly democratizing the tools of creativity and emancipating human imagination. A couple examples are Photoshop, TypePad, and GarageBand. Due to the rapid growth of new technology, it's allowing human beings to do things today that were impossible even a few decades ago. Some examples are mixing digital music loops to producing high dynamic range images, among many others. Hamel believes that we are the first generation in history that can honestly say we are limited only by our imagination.
The third challenge that Hamel outlines for us is dynamically reallocating resources. Gary Hamel wants us to think about what can be done to correct the tendency of companies to overinvest in the past at the expense of the future. This challenge is about finding ways to fund those ideas that normally would be overlooked. We need to find a way to look on the fringe to make this happen. Normally, funding projects would come from investing in the future. However, Hamel points out that many companies are wary of taking a chance on many projects because they are not guaranteed to have a fast return on their investment. Hamel introduces us to a company called Zopa, or Zone of Possible Agreement. Zopa is a United Kingdom-based online lending company. Instead of being similar to a bank, Zopa allows users to lend money to other users to fund projects. If you have extra cash, you can get a better return using a service like Zopa than you would with regular interest rates from your bank. The first year of Zopa's interest rates were just under 7%. So if you were interested in doing this, you would log onto the website, put in how much you want to donate, and how much you'd like your return to be. Zopa has their borrowers separated into two classes. The lower class would be a slightly higher risk, but you'd get a higher percentage interest rate on the return. While researching Zopa, I learned of their Safeguard program, which takes away some of the decision making from the lenders, but provides an insurance in case of borrower default. It should be mentioned that without Safeguard, the lender assumes all risk as the loan is not protected by FSCS, which is similar to our FDIC. Zopa did attempt to enter the market in the US, but left the States in 2008. The company considered the US market to be too risky to survive. Now bringing us back into the fringe, Hamel points out that these Zopa-style loans are often possible within your company. At the end of the year, there is more often money that is allocated to bonus pools, new hires, promotional materials, and capital equipment. What if the company added funding small projects as one of the options? These are projects that are out of budget but could possibly impact the future bottom line. If an employee has a great idea, they can even take part of the funds allocated to them to pay other employees to help them with their normal responsibilities. That brings us to challenge 4, which is aggregating collective wisdom. Hamel discusses what he calls the ignorance tax in this challenge. He states that companies will pay this when their decisions are uninformed. Most of the large decisions of companies come from the top senior executives. Hamel insists that nearly a quarter of those decisions were wrong. He questions if this is the case because top managers are afraid to get more input from those below because it could, quote, undermine the rationale for their stratospheric salaries, end quote. In fact, Ohio State's Research News points out that half of the business decisions that fail because of management blunders. Paul Nutt, who is a professor at Ohio State, points out that there are 3 common blunders. Management rushes to judgment, misuse their resources, and repeatedly use failure-prone tactics to make decisions. Gary Hamel points out that it is nearly impossible for a small group of executives to estimate the cost and benefits of a complex strategic decision. This is why he thinks that there should be a large group of people involved in the process, because the large group tends to outperform the smaller group of executives. Hamel recommends having a market in which your employees can buy and sell contracts based on their beliefs in a project. So if you, an employee, are given 3 project options, you would likely go for the one that you believe has the best chance of success. Hamel's final point for challenge number 4 is that with some humility at the top and help from the lower levels with their vast knowledge, we can reduce the ignorance tax that a company has to pay.
Challenge number 5 is about minimizing the drag of old mental models. Hamel says, analyze a company caught behind the curve, and you will find an organization where senior management has retained its influence but lost its foresight. A current example of this is with the mobile data company Sprint. Much of their demise and financial struggles are related to their inability to keep pace with other carriers in expanding their network infrastructure, which leads to slower available speeds and less coverage area. the company has been unwilling to tackle this problem and instead focuses on being the least expensive carrier available. Even with this strategy, they are still losing customers year over year. From Hamel's discussion, he shines a light on the inability of Nokia to similarly adapt to market conditions with regard to their snail-like rollout of a new smartphone design. This cost the company millions of dollars in market share as rival Samsung stepped in and brought new and innovative designs to market. The connection between Nokia and Torvald is their origin in Finland. Torvald runs Linux, the operating system used by Nokia and better known through the platform of Android operating system. From the text we learn about Torvald. Even with the layers of maintainers and lieutenants, he himself understands that the business cannot be run by power, but rather competence, commitment, and foresight. Nokia began using Linux in the mid-2000s, and while both currently have successes, there is a significant opportunity for both to develop. Nokia as a hardware supplier, and Linux with regard to offering applications to keep up with the likes of the Apple iOS. Challenge number 6 from Chapter 9 is giving everyone the chance to opt in. So one example can be from the HBO series Game of Thrones. Daenerys recruits her massive army or fleet by setting free the Unsullied. She is a different leader because she encourages them to fight with her instead of for her. This instills greater loyalty and passion in her people. This is opposite of the management mindset in the industrial era, in which employees unwillingly worked for someone and were a mere number on an assembly line. Hamel says human beings are more enthusiastic when they're doing the things they want to do.
In conclusion, Gary Hamel reminds us that you can't see the future if you're standing in the mainstream. Learning from the fringe provides alternatives to outdated management mindsets. 1. Create an environment where employees are free to share their thoughts and ideas. 2. Every employee has the potential to be a member of the creative class. 3. Correct the tendency of companies to overinvest in the past at the expense of the future. 4. Allow lower-level employees to bring their vast knowledge to the decision-making process. 5. Business will not be successful if run by power, but rather competence, commitment, and foresight. And finally, number 6. If management can align employee passions with job-related tasks, both parties will thrive. Thank you.